Haunted confession. The sinister case. A priest discovered that forever cursed his soul. Father Michael peered out from the church's crumbling facade, his heart pounding against his ribs. The town lay desolate before him, its once vibrant life strangled by despair. A sinister chill snaked through the air, whispering secrets he'd rather ignore. Every creak of the church's timbers seemed to echo those tales of old, the ones about vengeful spirits that haunted the abandoned spaces, lurking in the shadows and feeding on fear. Today, however, a different kind of horror awaited him. Emily entered with her 2 small children, their wide eyes filled with an unshakable dread. "Father?" Her voice trembled like a fragile leaf in the wind. "I need to confess something we can't keep buried any longer." She spoke of the whispers that prowled in her Victorian home, corner shadows that danced too eagerly, and metal toys rearranging themselves at night, as if animated by an unseen puppeteer. He listened, skepticism gnawing at his resolve, even as her fear clawed at him. Folklore, he thought, memories of the Wendigo and Skinwalker trailing through his mind. Yet, here she was, real, desperate, and terrified. Panic ratcheted the tension as Emily explained her family's fear. Each tremor of her voice echoed like a tolling bell, reverberating with a dread he couldn't shake off. What nightmares had chased her here, tossing and turning in his small rectory bedroom that night? Horrific visions invaded his slumber. He dreamt of twisted faces, neighbors whose smiles turned sharp like knives. The town's past crashed into him like a wave of blood and horror, exposing secrets that rotted beneath the town's surface: betrayal, cruelty, and whispers of forbidden rituals. His own heart raced with guilt. Nightmares morphed into shades at the edges of his vision, taunting him with implications he couldn't yet grasp. As the moon rose high, he woke drenched in sweat. Shadows flickered, and the room felt stifling, as though something unnatural loomed just out of sight. Each creak of the floorboards carried the weight of looming dread. He steadied himself, steady breaths turning ragged, before he resolved to help Emily. When he found her, fear wrapped around them like a suffocating shroud. "Father, it's happening again!" she cried, eyes wide and panicked, glancing back as if expecting to see something lurking behind her. Tension had built like a taut string, quivering with unspoken truths. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The air thickened as they leaned against the weathered church steps, shadows creeping along the ground hungrily. With each whispered confession, the town's darkness wrapped tighter around Father Michael. The anger from locals simmered just beneath the surface. "You shouldn't meddle in matters you don't understand, priest," they hissed, their eyes narrowing, silhouettes mirroring the very shadows they feared. Just as he felt he might uncover the truth, the echoes of his name surfaced, whispering from the church walls, dark and twisted. It was his past. He heard a sin long buried that threatened to rise again. With dread pooling in his stomach, Father Michael realized, to confront the evil lurking in the shadows of Emily's tale, he must first face the demons within himself, and the town's horrifying legacy that had always haunted him. As the shadows deepened around him, he began to wonder, would he become the savior he hoped to be, or would he be swallowed whole by the very darkness he sought to vanquish? The sun hung low in the sky, casting long fingers of darkness that intertwined with the remnants of daylight. Father Michael stood with Emily at the church entrance, the air thick with an unease that gnawed at both their hearts. He wanted to offer her solace, a few comforting words, but the weight of what he was experiencing held him back. Emily's children, 2 small figures, clung to their mother's tattered skirt, their eyes wide pools of terror. As she trembled, their silent pleas for safety spoke louder than her words. She tugged them closer, her gaze darting toward the shadows that crept from the forest's edge nearby. "Father," she whispered urgently, "I've seen it last night. It was in the hallway, right outside their room." A quiver filled her voice, pushing Michael to act. He felt a strange compulsion at that moment, an obligation beyond his duties as a priest. With her confession still hanging between them like thick fog, they walked into the church, its air charged with unspoken fears. Old pews creaked beneath their weight, the distant sound echoing like a signal of warning. The flickering candles cast shaky light upon statues that seemed to watch them with hollow eyes. "Let us pray," he managed to say, taking her hand, the warmth of her skin a stark contrast to the chill that cradled them. As they knelt, Father Michael felt a rush of panic. The weight of Emily's confession throbbed against his conscience. Visions of his dreams slipped back, twisted faces, angry whispers. Surely, this had to be tied to the town's sinister past he had tried so hard to escape. They prayed, voices mingling into a desperate plea for protection, for clarity, for something more than shadows. Until the candles flickered violently, pain shooting through him as if something unseen pressed against his very spirit. The air thickened, and he could almost hear the laughter of spirits, cruel and mocking. In that moment of vulnerability, Michael's mind raced. The town held dark secrets, entangled with his own. He could feel them pushing in against the walls of the church, as if yearning for liberation. The vengeful whispers, the tales of forbidden rituals, all coiled around him like serpents. "I need to know what you saw, Emily," he forced the words out, the urgency battling rage within. "Every detail, don't spare anything." She recoiled but steadied herself. "The children, they hear it too. It calls their names, Father." Her hands shook as she recalled the lingering darkness. It said it wanted them. Cold dread seeped into him, creeping into his bones. "What do you mean?" he pressed, barely keeping his voice steady. "It said it's coming for them," she whispered. Emily's breath quickened as the shadows around them flickered and writhed, forcing the choking fear deeper into Michael's core. Before he could respond, a loud thud reverberated through the church, rattling the stained glass. The doors swung open with a creak, revealing a pair of piercing eyes that glinted like shards of ice in the dim light. They were not alone. Panic surged as the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the night, each step a hammer against his heart. Was the town's darkness finally laying claim to them, or had it festered all along, waiting to be awakened? "Father, we have to leave," Emily shouted, pulling her children close, but Michael's feet felt rooted to the spot. The weight of fate pressed upon him, demanding he confront the truth, the true horror lurking beneath the fabric of their lives. As the figure stepped into the candlelight, the last glimmer of hope dimmed, the shadows stretching close around them. Who, or what, had crossed the threshold? And what was about to unfold beyond even his worst nightmare? The clock told ominously, an urgent reminder that time was running out. The darkness was hungry, and soon it would feast. What could the priest do against the evil that taunted him? The answer loomed just out of reach as the candlelight flickered for the last time. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face twisted with malice. It was a woman, her smile sharp, as if crafted from jagged glass. Dark hair fell over her shoulders like a waterfall of shadow, and her eyes glimmered a mismatch of colors, swirling and unsettling. Father Michael felt a deep shiver creep up his spine as an icy wind seemed to follow her, carrying the scent of decay and despair. "Leave now," the woman hissed, her voice slithering through the still air. It echoed around the church, mingling with the soft, flickering light of the candles, which began to drown under the weight of darkness. "Who are you?" Michael managed, his voice wavering. Emily clutched her children tightly, their eyes wide with fear. "Do you not recognize me, Father?" The woman's grin widened, revealing teeth that gleamed like knives. "I am the keeper of what you've tried to forget. The origin of your nightmares. The reason you were drawn back here. What do you want?" he demanded, steel creeping into his voice. But inside, dread twisted like a knife, carving deeper into his soul. "Your faith is weak," she sneered, stepping closer. The shadows around her danced with hunger, twisting and lunging as if alive. "You cannot protect them. I will take what is mine." "No!" Emily cried out, taking a step forward. "You won't touch my children." Her voice cracked, a mix of anger and fear that momentarily pierced through the thick pall of shadow. "Oh, but they belong to me now," the woman hissed, her gaze shifting to the children. "They've heard my call, Father. They've welcomed the darkness." The children began to tremble, small whimpers slipping from their lips as the air grew dense with an overwhelming sense of despair. Father Michael felt their fear wrapping around him like barbed wire. The walls of the church seemed to close in, the once comforting sanctuary now feeling like the mouth of some great beast ready to swallow them whole. "Look at what you've created." The woman spat, gesturing to the church. "This place can't save you. All your prayers worthless against the pull of the abyss. They will join the chorus of lost souls. It is already too late." Father Michael's heart raced. He could see glimpses of something dark, lurking just behind the woman. Flickering figures, tortured souls whispering his name. They taunted him, their eyes brimming with regret, and one figure stepped closer, an old friend lost to time, their presence a reminder of the sins he'd buried deep. "No!" Michael shouted, desperate to shake free from their grip on reality. "This isn't real." But as the woman laughed, the sound like ice cracking in the stillness of a winter night, the ground beneath him shuddered. The candles sputtered, throwing monstrous shadows across the walls. "Will you embrace the truth, or shall we dance in darkness?" She lunged, a blur of darkness, energy crackling around her fingers. As Michael braced himself, instinct kicking in, the church's walls seemed to shatter, the foundation trembled, and the world around them flickered like a poorly tuned television screen. In that chaotic moment, realization struck him: what if she was right? What if he wasn't strong enough to fight? "Father!" Emily's voice broke through, filled with despair. "Don't let her take them." The bond of urgency pulled at him. He raised his hand, ready to invoke the light he had relied on. But what if the light wasn't enough? What if the darkness was already within him? And then he heard it, a muffled chant drifting in from the corners of the church, a dissonant melody rising in strength, echoing the threats of the woman. The ground shook more violently, and as the shadows lunged, Michael felt the walls close in around him. "This is for them!" he shouted, gathering all his strength, both to repel the darkness and to unleash the truths he had buried for far too long. With one final push, he cried out a prayer, but as he did, an overwhelming silence followed. What had he unleashed? As the shadows swallowed the light, the answer came, but a heartbeat too late, the church engulfed in chaos and terror. What price would he pay for salvation? The darkness exploded around them, a wave of shadows crashing into the flickering light. The church trembled as though it were alive. Father Michael's legs felt heavy, weighed down by an invisible force. Panic clawed at his throat, his heart pounding. Emily's scream shattered the suffocating silence that followed his prayer, but the sound was dim, muffled by an engulfing blackness that pressed in on all sides. "No!" he screamed, his voice battling against the smothering silence. "Stay away from them." In that moment of despair, the twisted figure of the woman shimmered through the gloom, her laugh reverberating like broken glass. "You think your voice can save them? I do not fear your God. I am the darkness you've ignored." Her words slithered through the air, chilling him to the bone. The children were silent now, their eyes glazed over like marbles, lost in a trance. Emily stood frozen, horror written across her face as she reached toward them, but the shadows wrapped around her, tugging her back. "Fight it! Fight!" Michael shouted, desperation lacing his voice. He focused on the children, their innocent faces flickering in the dim light that still clung to life. The memory of laughter, warmth, and love surged, igniting something deep within him. "Together! Hold on to each other!" he roared, raising his voice above the chaos. The walls of the church vibrated, shaking loose decades of dust. But the woman was relentless. She pressed closer, her breath cold against Michael's skin. "Their fear nourishes me, Father. You are but a flicker, and I am the storm. Your faith is an echo, nothing more." He drew in a shaky breath, feeling the weight of her words suffocating him. It was then he saw something tiny figures dancing on the edge of the shadows, whispering secrets he'd long buried. Memories of lost souls, and within them, the sorrow of choices he'd made, choices that had brought him here. "Why did you come back, Michael?" A familiar voice taunted, echoing from the dark corners of his mind. "You thought your past was behind you. But it clings like a shadow." "No, it can't be real," he muttered, fighting to stay grounded. "Then awaken." The woman hissed, her eyes gleaming like serpents in the blackness. "Embrace me, or watch them wither." Suddenly, the church transitioned, spilling into fragments of memory. A confessional booth, stained with tears, a young girl, a whispered sin that had never been spoken aloud. "I took her light. I took her life," he heard himself whisper from the depths of torment. The church shook again, a low rumble like thunder, as the figures in the shadows tugged at his consciousness, their voices rising in a cacophony of despair. He realized they were not just remnants of his past but pieces of his own torment, echoes of decisions that had marked him. "Father! Fight her!" Emily's voice cut through the chorus, pulling him back. The moment sparked something fierce within him. "By the light of truth, I command you, leave this place." His voice lifted, stronger, as he grasped the collar of his priestly garment. He wasn't just any man, he was a shepherd, a bastion against the darkness. The shadows recoiled, screaming as they clashed against the surge of light emanating from him. The church vibrated with energy, and the candles ignited, swirling flames illuminating the suffocating dread, but as hope grappled with despair, he felt the power of the darkness clawing at him, trying to creep back in. "Is it enough?" he gasped. "Can I hold it back?" With the flicker of flame, he saw glimpses of terror within the shadows, figures reaching out with desperate hands filled with pain. "You will never escape your guilt." The woman shrieked, her voice a shrill echo. The darkness writhed, reaching for his heart, and it was within that moment he understood his salvation came at a price. And then the world around him erupted into a symphony of chaos again, a final anguished scream of a forgotten soul resonating within the dark recesses of his mind. What would he unleash next? The shadows twisted, crawling up the walls like ivy gone wild. Michael fought to regather his strength, the heat from the flickering candles reminding him of the flicker of hope inside him. But the woman loomed, her shape a sinister visage bathed in shadow, tantalizing him with memories he wished to forget. "Give in," she whispered, slithering closer, her breath icy against his skin. "Let your heart shatter, and I will carry them away. Return to the peace you once craved." "No." He gritted his teeth, trembling. He could feel Emily's gaze, filled with both fear and grim determination. "Make it real, Michael," she yelled, her voice a lifeline in the ocean of despair. "Remember who you are." He closed his eyes, visions of childhood laughter and sunlight flooded his mind. He thought of the little girl in the confessional, her eyes wide and trusting. She had come seeking guidance, and he had failed her. "By the grace of God, I stand against you," Michael shouted, his voice firming as he pushed back against the suffocating dark. The darkness shrieked, pulling away momentarily, but it surged forward once more vicious than before, clawing and howling with rage. The cacophony of lost souls screamed in unison, echoing through the hollow church, each cry sharpening the edges of his mounting dread. "Do you hear them?" the woman hissed, her voice a blend of silk and venom. "They will never be free. Just like you." He could hear the low whispers of despair, the suffocated cries that filled the air. They were drowning every flicker of light within him. "Stop. You won't take them," Michael bellowed, finding something deep within that wanted to explode out. "I am a servant of the Lord." His heart raced as he clutched a rosary tightly, feeling the worn beads between his fingers. Like a dam breaking, a pulse of light surged through him. It felt electric, a raw and vibrant force igniting every part of his being. "Father, you can do it." Emily's faith crackled in the air. "Light!" Michael shouted, raising the rosary high above his head. Illuminate this darkness. The shadows recoiled as sunlight burst forth from the small stained glass window, ripping apart the midnight that smothered their sanctuary. Colors splashed across the walls, vibrant and alive, slicing through the chaos. But the woman laughed cruelly, her form shifting as she wrapped herself in the remnants of the shadows. You think light destroys me? Her voice twisted into a guttural growl, reverberating through the church. I shall return, and when I do, you will be alone. Their screams will ring in your heart. With a swift motion, the shadows lashed out, and Michael felt icy tendrils wrap around his throat. Breathless, he struggled, fear clawing at his sanity. The children were still in a trance, and Emily's outstretched hand trembled, straining against an unseen weight. Fight it! Emily cried, but her voice fading into the buzzing thrums of the gathering darkness. Just as he thought hope was slipping away, he remembered the laughter of that little girl, a sound that brightened even the darkest corners of his mind. With a fierce battle cry, he focused on that memory, on the love that pulsed from the heart of his faith. Get behind me! He bellowed, the rosary glowing brighter than the fires of heaven, casting beams against the looming shadows. They screamed, terrible, anguished wails that clawed at the very core of his being. But as the light swelled, he felt a shift in the atmosphere, as though gravity had changed, darkness swirling, losing its grip. For the lives lost, I stand undaunted. Michael shouted, gripping the rosary tighter, pulling everything he had. In a burst of energy, the shadows twisted one last time, dissipating as the vibrant rays shattered the darkness. The church shook violently, and then all at once silence. But the stillness felt wrong. Michael opened his eyes, and dread pooled in his gut. The shadows were gone, yes, but the children remained silent. He searched frantically for Emily, but she was gone, and the cold weight of a sinister presence lingered in the air. Where is she? He gasped, panic rising anew. Then he heard a soft, haunting laughter, echoing through the empty church. Michael, have you truly won? As the chilling sound enveloped him, dread lifted a curtain in his soul. Was this battle truly over? Or had it only just begun? The silence stretched, thick and suffocating as Michael's heart pounded in his chest. The church lay in eerie stillness, the flickering candles casting uncertain shadows that danced like lost souls on the walls. He fought to steady his breath, but the ghostly laughter echoed in his mind, taunting him, enveloping him in despair. Emily! He shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. He stepped forward, scanning the pews for any sign of her. The children remained slumped, their heads hanging down, as if weighed by an invisible force. The sight made bile rise in his throat. Please, God, let her be safe, he whispered, gripping the rosary tighter. The once spotless church felt foreign now, a shell of warmth turned to ice. The very walls seemed to whisper evil secrets, suffused with an energy that demanded despair. Where are you? He whispered again, stepping toward the altar. The air was thick and heavy, each inhalation laced with foreboding. He could feel it, a palpable tension teetering on the edge of chaos, crawling beneath his skin, and then, he noticed it, a flicker of movement out of the corner of his eye. He turned sharply, heart racing, but it was only the late afternoon light spilling through the stained glass window, casting grotesque images of saints and shadows that danced across the cold floor. It was a cruel reminder of light juxtaposed with the darkness that threatened to enclose him once more. Stay. Be here, please, he murmured, though he knew it was futile. The words felt weak, like dry leaves crumbling in his hands. He felt watched, not just by the unseen presence of the woman but by the very weight of the church itself, as if the building were drawing breath, ready to exhale its secrets. Suddenly, the laughter echoed again, sharper now, winding around him. You think the light saved you? The voice twisted through the air, slicing at his resolve. You are far from victory, Michael. He gritted his teeth, defiance rising in his chest. I want to let you win. Not now, not ever. With that, he turned his face to the altar, drawing strength from the fragments of faith that still flickered inside him. As he knelt, he felt the coolness of the stone pressing against his knees, grounding him in a moment of prayer. "Guide me, Lord," he cried, desperation lacing his voice. "Protect my flock, especially Emily. Show me the way." But the shadows stirred, swirling in response, slicing through his prayer with a sickening hiss. "She is already lost, Michael. You know what has to be done to save her." The whispers crawled inside his thoughts, feeding off his fear. "No," he moaned, shaking his head. "There had to be another way. She can't die. I won't allow it. I'll return," the voice promised, the chill freezing his blood. "Soon, and when I do, I'll bring her back to you, but you'll have to sacrifice what you hold most dear." In that moment, the world sharpened around him. Every breath became a razor's edge, every heartbeat an echo of his imminent doom. Something deep inside knew the price of this darkness was not just Emily's life, but his very soul. Panic surged as he stumbled back. "No. I won't trade my soul." The laughter echoed again, mocking him. "Then face your fears, for a choice will soon be yours, or you will be swallowed whole by the shadows you seek to fight." Michael fought to swallow the terror rising in his throat. He felt the grip of dread closing tighter. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, as an unearthly chill swept through the church. In that fracture of sanity, he understood this was only the beginning. Suddenly, the children stirred. Their heads lifted in unison, eyes empty but locked onto him, staring without seeing. "Michael, save us," they chimed, their voices a dissonant echo, tugging at his heart. The walls trembled as he realized he was not alone. The room pulsed with unholy energy, threatening to rip apart the fragile unity he had built in the light. As the shadows swirled again, he felt the weight of his decision pressing down upon him. The darkness would come back, it would demand a price. What would he sacrifice? Before he could answer, the church doors slammed shut, trapping him inside, leaving Michael questioning the very core of his faith. "Make your choice," a voice whispered cruelly, because this nightmare was far from over. The air thickened, the cold gnawing at Michael's skin as the shadows twisted and turned, curling around him like restless serpents. He stumbled backwards, heart racing, his breath coming in harsh gasps. The children's eyes, devoid of life, bored into him a silent demand wrapped in desperation. "Michael, save us." Their voices melded into a haunting hymn, an echo that reverberated through the silent church. It seemed to rise from the very stones, that once felt hallowed, now dripped with an unholy weight. "Stop!" he shouted, half pleading, half defiant, as if the force of his voice could break the spell. But the shadows thickened, swirling heavier around him, the flickering candlelight barely able to cut through the darkness. He felt himself teetering on the precipice of something dreadful, something that demanded more than mere belief. It wanted his soul. "Your faith falters," the vile voice hissed, reverberating before it faded to a whisper. "What will you give?" As the darkness danced closer, he took a step towards the altar, the cool stone beneath his hands grounding him, reminding him of the purpose that had brought him here. But Emily's absence loomed larger than ever. "I will not give you anything," he cried out, anger mixed with despair, though deep down he felt the currents of hopelessness sliding into his very core. The shadows flickered, revealing faces that shouldn't have been there, twisted expressions of regret and rage. They clawed at his emotions, dragging forth memories better left forgotten. He saw parents in turmoil, friends lost to the depths of addiction, a childhood filled with laughter followed by an unbearable silence. Every laugh, every joy, every blessing turned to ashes in his soul. Suddenly, a flickering light illuminated the church, momentarily piercing the dark. In that brief glow, he saw them, the children, no longer lifeless. They were up and moving, shadows of their former selves, drifting closer to him, their small faces twisted in pain. "Michael," they breathed, their voices piercingly soft, laden with spectral longing. "You must decide." As the light faded, the chill returned, wrapping around him tighter. The church shifted, the walls looming closer as if they wanted to engulf him. Every beat of his heart echoed in the silence, a countdown he couldn't ignore. "No. I refuse," he shouted defiantly. He couldn't bear this weight of despair. The shadows wanted him to give in to the darkness. They wanted his pain, his guilt, the sins he had not yet absolved. "Forgive me, Father," echoed through his mind, but a small flicker of light remained within him, a spark of hope he couldn't extinguish. "Emily is not lost. I won't lose anyone else." The words tore from his throat, raw and desperate. He turned back to the children's eyes, trying to break through their misty horror. "I will find a way. I promise." But the shadows recoiled, laughter blending with muffled sobs, as if his very defiance had triggered a storm. "You don't understand, Michael. You cannot save them without sacrifice. The truth will uncover what lies buried." The walls shuddered again, and fear clawed its way back as tendrils of darkness snaked toward him. Michael could feel it in his bones, the truth beckoning him forward, daring him to confront the grotesque narrative laid before him. His fate pulsing in the room, a flicker of doubt gnawed at his resolve. What truth? What sacrifice awaited him? Before he could dwell deeper into the implications, the atmosphere changed. One child lunged forward, a dark shimmer caught his eye but dulled too quickly for him to grasp. Choose. Or be consumed. He stumbled back, the weight of the church pressing against him, shadows swirling relentlessly, and in the recesses of his mind, he heard her name whispering, Emily. At that moment, the lights flickered violently, a final warning vibrating through the building. The walls cried out along with the shadows, begging him to see, to feel the true cost of ignorance. Michael stood on the edge of despair, the shadows now tightening their grip, and he took a deep breath, heart hammering in. Knowing the choice he was about to face would seal his fate. What truth lay hidden just beyond the veil, waiting for him to uncover? And what sacrifice would he be forced to make to stop the darkness? The shadows convulsed, their whispers crescendoing into a chilling symphony that drowned out Michael's frantic thoughts. Every inch of him screamed to flee, but the magnetic force binding him to the altar held firm. As the children closed in, their once innocent faces now contorted with grief, he was paralyzed, trapped by an unseen force that craved desperation. Choose, they implored again, their small arms reaching out, fingers trembling as if they could pull him deeper into their plight. The air crackled with charged energy, and Michael felt the pulse of the church, a heavy heartbeat that echoed his own. Would it quicken to a full thrum of life, or would it subside into a chilling silence? Please. The word slipped from his lips, a raw plea barely escaping his throat. He was drowning in their sorrow. Suddenly, a wave of warmth pierced through the bitter cold, a stark contrast that left him gasping. It flickered, a distant memory, a time when laughter danced freely in the air, when hope didn't feel like an insurmountable weight carved into his bones. Sacrifice, the voice shrieked, loud enough to drown out the memories. Your truth is steeped in blood. What will you concede? Images surged through his mind, the day Emily slipped from his grasp, the heartbreak that had shattered him. He felt her absence like a gaping wound. No. I will not forsake anyone. But deep down, he could feel the shadow's grip squeezing tighter, each word a tightening coil around his heart. As he struggled for breath, the walls shifted again, the darkened windows morphing into blank, soulless eyes that conspired against him. From them seeped a dark fog, thick and choking, suffocating any flickers of hope. The price is steep, they taunted, echoing mockingly. He clutched the altar, the stone cool against his fevered palms. He could sense the truth lurking just beyond his grasp, like a coiled serpent ready to strike. What truth? He shouted, defiance mixing with confusion. What do you want from me? The shadows swirled into a vortex before him, forming shapes, visages of those he had hurt. Each face bore witness to his failures, the broken promises weighing down like chains. You have the power, the choice. They hissed, voices overlapping as if they were one frantic scream. Stop. Michael slammed his hands to his ears, shaking his head violently to disperse the horrors. But the pain in their eyes pierced his heart deeper. "What do you want?" he yelled, desperation carving his voice raw. "Your guilt, your light," they chorused, their words melded into a haunting, liquid flow. "To save them, you must embrace the truth. Reveal your sins." With a pang of realization, clarity cut through the fog of despair. He thought of Emily, of the darkness that threatened to swallow her whole. "But I'm scared of what I've done. I can't show you." His stomach twisted, grappling with guilt that threatened to implode him. In that moment, the ground trembled, shadows pooling like a gathering storm, swirling with intense hunger. "Guilt!" they cried, their voices resonating with ancient wrath. "It festers and breeds, reveal it and be free." And Michael realized that the truth was never meant to be buried. He had run long enough. The light flickering inside him was not to be extinguished but harnessed. Taking a deep breath, he prepared to confront his demons. As he opened his mouth, willing himself to speak the burden he had carried, a surge of light filled the church once more. Shadows recoiled, as if burned. But just as suddenly, the light dimmed, and he felt reality shift beneath his feet. A figure appeared in the shadows, draped in darkness, drawing closer. The laugh he heard was bone-chilling, echoing off the ancient stones. "Choose wisely, priest, before it's too late." Michael's stomach turned, and terror gripped him more firmly than before. What monster had joined this twisted game? What consequence awaited him? He hesitated, knowing he was creeping closer to the edge, and his next words could usher in his salvation or damnation. Would he find the courage to expose the light while darkness loomed, ravenous for his secret? Each heartbeat was a countdown to a truth that might change everything, if he dared to wield it. The figure stepped into the faint light, revealing a face that was unnaturally serene, yet deformed in a way that painted fear across Michael's heart. It wore a crooked smile, one that promised both salvation and doom. The laughter echoed around him, relentless and mocking, reverberating off the stone walls as if the very church were alive with malevolence. "Is the weight of your sins too much to bear?" it sneered, voice smooth like honey but edged with a razor's sharpness. Michael staggered back, the arms of the spectral children reaching for him, pulling him to their despair. Each touch sent cold shivers down his spine, and he felt his resolve crumbling. "What do you want from me?" he finally forced out, battling against the urge to break down and flee. The pressure around his chest grew, tightening like a vice. "Only your truth." The figure leaned closer, its breath a putrid gust that tickled his nostrils. "That's the only thing keeping the shadows at bay. And they hunger, Michael. For every tear you fail to shed, the shadows grow stronger." Desperation clawed at him. Each heartbeat thundered in his ears, drowning out the whispers, drowning out his regret. He thought of Emily again, her laughter untouched by sorrow. Hadn't he promised her safety? "I didn't mean for it to happen," he shouted, fighting against the pulsing dread. "It wasn't my fault." For a moment, the shadows shifted back, as if considering his words, but the grip of guilt tightened, sending a jolt of realization through him. The burden of innocence lost, the figure whispered, its eyes glinting with a wicked delight. "Every choice leads to a sacrifice, priest. Will you take the blame? Or will you let the darkness claim what it desires?" He felt his knees buckle under the weight of their sad stares. The ground beneath him vibrated, and through the tremors came voices, rising like an ominous chant, "Give your truth or doom us all." In that instant, time slipped away. Each rapid breath was a dark reminder of all he had lost, and the fear of losing more pushed him toward a precipice he hadn't realized he was on. "No. I can't," he screamed, but the shadows stirred restlessly, emboldened by his reluctance. But what if voicing his sins could save them? What if revealing his truth could silence their cries? The walls pulsated with a growing hunger, the children's faces now twisted masks of desperation. Michael could feel the chill creeping back, smelling the decay that clung to the darkness. His stomach lurched, and holding his breath only heightened the terror. "Will you concede?" The figure crooned, eyes alight with temptation. Think of them of the light they miss. Choose the truth, Michael. Share it, or let them fall. As the shadows surged forward, the figure gestured toward the altar. All it takes is a confession. A single word too long held. Heart racing, Michael scanned the room, each face now a very real embodiment of every choice he had made. The church's atmosphere warped, closing in, his breath quickening to match the frantic rhythm of a wild drum. Do it. The figure hissed, every syllable a sharp blade. Face the shadows of your past. A glimmer of hope flickered within. Could this be the way to free them? In an instant, the weight of his secrets became unbearable, a tidal wave threatening to drown him. As the shadows curled around him, Michael finally raised his voice. A thunderous crash erupted through the church, shaking the very foundation. Chaos spilled from the shattering windows as darkness loomed ever closer, howling in rage. What have you done? The figure screamed, its facade fracturing under the weight of incoming terror. Michael. A voice sobbed, human and familiar, slicing through the chaos. It was Emily. His heart raced, panic flooding his veins. What had he awakened? Choose now. Came the cacophony from all directions, growing louder, drowning him in noise. Would he dare to pull back the veil of his soul, exposing its deepest shame as all hell broke loose? Suddenly, the church groaned, and the shadows came rushing in, seeking the light or consuming it. Michael's mind spun. Time slipped away, and he teetered on the brink of oblivion. Would he face his demons and reveal the truth, or let it consume him entirely? There was no turning back now. Father Michael stood in the heart of the church, surrounded by unsettling silence. The air felt thick and heavy, charged with uncertain energy, as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting for something to unfold. The flickering candles, remnants of light, cast eerie shadows that whispered stories of a darkness he could no longer ignore. Michael, the hushed voice pierced the stillness like a needle. It came from the children. Their hollow eyes bore into him, urging him to act, to choose a choice that could mean salvation or damnation. But where was Emily? Panic welled inside him, churning like a storm. His heart raced, pounding against his ribcage like a frantic drum echoing through endless dark. Emily! He shouted, calling out into the suffocating void that wrapped around him. A chilling laughter shattered the quiet, echoing back his fears tenfold. She's lost, Michael. Your failure to embrace the truth allowed the darkness to spread, the twisted figure urged, its grin a sick parody of glee. Only by laying bare your soul can you hope to save her. No. He screamed, the denial clawing at his throat. I wouldn't trade my horror for anyone. But deep down, dread lingered, a shadow of fear that nestled against his heart. What price would he have to pay? Choose. The figure commanded, stepping closer, its dark form looming over him. Shadows twisted and swirled around, hunger seeped into the atmosphere, infecting the once hallowed ground. You have the power to end this, but at what cost? The children trembled closer, their voices mingling, merging into a haunting cry for help. Save us, Michael. Please. Their small arms reached out, desperation stretching and pulling at his very core. He fell to his knees, breathless, the stone altar cool against his trembling palms. Memories flooded in laughter, light, warmth, all stained with the regret of a confession he never made. I can't do it, he whispered, overwhelmed. But you must, the figure hissed, its voice slithering into his veins. For it is your truth that can vanquish the darkness. He closed his eyes, picturing Emily's smile, the warmth of her voice that blossomed in joy. Fear bubbled against his chest. What if he failed? What if revealing himself meant she'd be lost forever? The shadows coiled tighter, a band of despair tugging at his spirit, a darkness that wished to see him broken, overwhelmed by guilt. Suddenly, clarity struck like lightning. He was a priest, a shepherd, meant to guide. He breathed, heart racing. I see now. I've hidden too long. He felt the shadows recoil slightly, as though uncertain of his resolve. "My guilt is my own," he began, each word gathering strength, carrying the weight of all that had been buried. "I failed her. When she came to me for guidance, I turned my back. I failed to see her pain because I was too afraid to face my own." His voice grew louder, echoing through the church, reaching the corners where shadows lurked. "Say it." The figure whispered now, coaxing him from the darkness. "Say the truth, and you shall be free. I took from you Emily. I lost you when I turned my back in your darkest hour. In my fear, I abandoned you." His words tumbled out, raw and unshielded, fueled by the truth he had long buried. The church shook, a profound rumble that sent tremors through the very stones. With each confession, a sliver of light pierced the dark, illuminating the foggy edges of shadow. The children gasped, their eyes flickering with newfound life. The grip of despair loosened. "You may say your truth, but can you withstand the consequences?" The figure hissed, its form wavering as if caught in a battle against the light. Collecting himself, Michael stood tall, fueled by purpose. "I embrace my guilt," he cried, voice resonating with clarity, determination cascading like a waterfall. "I choose to fight for redemption, not just for me, but for all the lost souls. I will not allow the shadows to hold sway over this church, this town, or over Emily any longer." The church erupted in light, a brilliant surge that drowned out the darkness. Candles ignited in a blaze of hope, flames licking the air with healing warmth, slicing through spectral tendrils that shrieked and writhed. The spectral children, once trapped, blinked, their innocence restoring with each past moment. Michael felt their presence strong, unyielding. They were no longer vessels of despair but lights of courage rising from the ashes of his regret. "Emily, forgive me," he shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. "Your strength empowers me. Together, we can reclaim our light." And just as the shadows lunged, the darkness unraveled, folding in on itself like a dying star, collapsing inward. A flash of brilliance erupted, illuminating the church as the ghastly laughter faded into distant echoes. Then, silence, complete stillness enveloped them. Father Michael collapsed to the floor, light dimming, breaths heavy but filled with relief. As he looked around, the church seemed more alive than ever, the weight of sorrow lifted, leaving space for redemption woven tightly into the fabric of his soul, and then he felt it, a warm hand clasping his own. His eyes flew open, and there she was, Emily, her face radiating warmth, her children at her side, all unharmed, unburdened. "Michael," she whispered, tears shining with gratitude and forgiveness. "You did it. You faced the darkness." "I was lost for too long," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "But I found my way back. Together, we can start anew." As he looked around the church, he knew it wasn't just him who had been reborn. The town, shrouded in darkness for too long, would find healing too. Father Michael rose, Emily's children clinging to her side, hope sparking anew in their eyes. "Together," he declared, a sincere vow of unity and strength, "we will reclaim this town. No more shadows, no more darkness." With renewed vigor, they stepped forward, light spilling from the church, scattering the remaining shadows. As they walked away from the church, hand in hand, Michael knew they would face whatever came next together. The dawn of a new chapter awaited them all. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss these exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and support the channel. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.